we're in chapter 1, sort of 14 to 15, and then moving into the encounter between the fifth patriarch and the sixth patriarch, Hui Neng. I'm trying to figure out, did we stop last week at sort of at 15, right? We didn't get to his verse, or his pronouncement upon his, okay. So the fifth patriarch has let the Hui Neng continue his practice for 8 months, pretty intensely, but we don't know what he's doing in this 8 period. It doesn't say what he did for 8 months, except that he worked in the kitchen hulling the rice on this machine. We don't know if he was meditating or not, what he was studying, if anything. All we know is that 8 months have passed, and the fifth patriarch now knows that it's time to have the exchange between the two of them as a follow-up to the exchange they had when they first came in. And of course, the language that's used here is metaphor or analogy. He comes, first of all, he doesn't even invite him to the room directly. How does he come in? How does he decide that it's time to come to the patriarch's room? Right. What does he do with his staff? Strikes it 3 times behind his back, right? And then he goes away. Now, if he misinterpreted this and he shows up at that hour of the watch, he could get really scolded. What are you doing here at this hour? Well, I saw you hit your staff 3 times on your back, and I knew you meant come to the back door at this hour. So he got it right. But it's also indicating that the tense atmosphere in the monastery regarding the fifth patriarch and who is going to get some direct teaching, who is going to get a more personal, intimate contact with him, who would then be favored or showing some sign of being the next one to take on this role, is being watched very carefully. So the way he communicates has to be very subtle and very unnoticed. And of course, the coming of the two of them together in this period of the night when everybody reinforces the need for secrecy, not about the Dharma being a secret, but secrecy about their relationship, and that he's going to, as we see, decide that he in fact is ready to be the next patriarch. And the secrecy is for his own protection, for his own well-being. The idea where he says, a seeker of the way would forget his very life for the Dharma, that's on page 14. You could take it as just a statement of the seriousness that which he regards cultivation. But it also could be a question posed to Hui Neng in the form of, have you emptied yourself? Are you a vessel ready to receive the teaching? In other words, giving up his life does not mean in the ordinary sense that he's giving up his mortal coil or giving up his existence. It rather means, are you giving up the ordinary, unawakened identity that you exist in, that we all exist in? Are you ready to let go of this false sense of self. And in a sense, that's sometimes called in this tradition a dying. But the dying is not referring to the dying of the person, it's referring to the dying of the ego. And so I think this line is indicating or asking, have you gotten to that point now where you've seen through the emptiness of the self and what belongs to the self? Have you seen not self? Have you died in that way? And it also means dying to your klesha, dying to the things that fuel the identity, which is the greed, the anger, the wanting, the craving. He's asking not just a simple question, but he's asking a very profound question. And of course, what follows next, I think makes sense. And he says, is the rice ready yet? And again, he's pushing the metaphor, and he says, the rice has long been ready. I'm ready. I'm the rice. Okay, I'm ready. It's only waiting now for the sieve. And the sieve is that which separates the hull from the kernel. And so his job when he's crushing the rice is to pound and separate those two. So in a sense he's saying, is the seed nature there now? Yes, it's there. I recognize the seed nature. It just needs to be a little blowing away of the hulls here to make sure I got it right. But it also means I've stripped away the coverings of myself. I've stripped away the coverings. Anything covering over my essential nature, I have been working and I've stripped those away. I am right here, ready, present, and I don't have any more impediments, obstacles, klesha, that doesn't make me a fit vessel to receive this Dharma. I am open and totally available. Yeah.
So he asked him the same question twice, essentially. First time he asked it directly, and the second time he asked it in code. Was that intentional? Last time you said, I think, that the first question was rhetorical, but was it rhetorical in the sense that if the Sixth Patriarch had answered the first question, would that have been disqualifying? You're not ready?
I don't think so. I think it was a rhetorical type question, but it was also a confirmation. He comes to him at this point when he has been exerting obviously incredible effort on his mind ground. That's why there's no really appearance to what he's been doing, because this kind of work of really deconstructing the ego and the self is done in a very solitary, quiet way. Nobody sees anything going on here. In fact, the very truth to the work is it doesn't have any appearance to it. Because if it had a mark or appearance, it would then be some kind of advertisement of something, and therefore it's called wuxiang, without mark. Because as you erase the marks of the ego, there's nothing left. The Taoists call it like an uncarved block. There's just this natural face, your original face there, and it doesn't have any signs or appearances. To the teacher, it's just like the clay is just now so ready to form. So he's been working. When the teacher comes in, it's just like an affirmation. So you have to give up your life to get this Dharma. And it's like, yeah, you really put out the effort here. He's acknowledging that he has reached that state in the form of a rhetorical question. Yeah. And he's like, it's almost like, so you've really sweated and grounded out here. You know, you've really been working out in the gym. You're ready to go, right, man? And he's like, yeah. You know. Yeah. Now, if he'd come earlier... Huh? But he doesn't have to, because his very presence, his very readiness and being, his being, is already the answer. In a sense, the fifth patriarch is just saying, you're ready, aren't you? You're really ready. And he poses it in this way. And the giving up of the life, interestingly, means... until you put down what's false, you can't pick up what's true. You have been spending 8 months putting down whatever remains of the false, and you've given up this, quote, false life for the true life. You're ready to be reborn in the Dharma.
I have to say that the subterfuge of all this really bugs me. It seems like constant kind of obstacles being thrown up to getting at, I guess maybe it's the Western part of my mind just to say, just get to the point, just say what you mean. and I understand that there's this political context that, there's the fear of this, for the security of the Sixth Patriarch, but it bothers me that so much of this is either unspoken or said in metaphor and I don't know, I guess I'm just curious what your reaction to that is. Is that, do you understand why that would be frustrating? It's kind of like, why speak in code?
Well, to say it's subterfuge sort of implies a sort of guile. Subterfuge, at least as I understand it, is a kind of trickery or disguise or deceit.
Yeah.
I don't think, my reading of this is not subterfuge, and it's not necessarily code, but it's talking about that which is very hard to talk about.
Right, yeah.
Because the reason they're talking in metaphor or analogy or seemingly obliquely is because the very quality of what he's about to confirm and experience is so elusive that they don't want to put the common terms or names we would put. Are you egoless?
Right. Yeah.
It's not that it's too coarse, but it sets up something, and the delicacy of what they're doing is he's getting to the point of understanding his attainment is getting nothing to get. And so it's so subtle only because they want to avoid establishing some entity or thing that he's going to get, which would be the very opposite of having a mind that's unattached, clinging to nothing. That the state that they're talking about is a kind of profound emptiness, but within that is this incredible fullness. So they have to use, it's like in the opening lines of the Tao Te Ching, which I think express it the same way. It's Dao Ke Dao, Fei Chang Dao, Ming Ke Ming, Fei Chang Ming. It says, the Tao that can be named or called the Tao isn't the real Tao. Because when you give it a name, it can't be the real name, because now you've reified it into something where you get and you call this is Tao. But what's happening here, he's saying, this Tao that I'm transmitting, this Tao that you have, we don't even put a name on it, because to put a name on it is to make it something is to set up something that you get, and there's a getter. And so the obliqueness of the language isn't subterfuge, and it isn't even sort of game-like Zen banter. It's actually trying to use language to the extreme point of pointing to something that can be experienced but not explained in words. And I think that's what's going on with the here. Because to be so direct as to call it something is to then put it into a shape or form that becomes an object that you get or attain. By giving it a name, it actually, ironically, doesn't clarify it, it shrinks it. And so that's why often you'll see in the sutras, they talk about the nameless. The path of words and language is cut off.
Yes.
And it's mentioning something, because it's not self and anything that belongs to the self, then the language that's used to point to it has to be both expansive and at the same time imprecise in terms of a thing that's gotten. Because its very nature is that which is let go of. In other words, you have it whole and complete originally. By not naming it, by not calling it, by not seeking it, by not feeling you're missing it, it's there. As soon as you reach out to grab it,
sort of Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Yeah, I guess that part of what I'm struggling with here is based on my own background of growing up here in the Bay Area during the Jonestown events, and Jim Jones, and this kind of so much working around the point without getting to the point seems to be kind of Lucy with the football kind of a thing, where you can never quite attain it. We're gonna keep it from you just a little bit so that you're always maybe wanting. And I think that in this case, I recognize that there's intended to be a difference, that this is going for something along the lines of what you said better than I could ever say. But I think this method can also be really perverted and really lead people down a bad path. And I think it just bugs me. I don't have it. I think that I learned from the whole growing up around here and the Jonestown experience was, you know, you don't want to trust people like that. You don't want to, you know, having that kind of trust in somebody can really be perverted and turned against you. So it's difficult for me to understand how this is instructive in that way, and I realize we've barely gotten into it and touched the surface
Right.
of it. So I say all that with caveats, but
The
that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Right, and I understand that that's not at all where this is going. In fact, he is about to confirm that he got it. No more tennis, you know, back and forth.
Right.
And get out of here now. You're on your way. So there's no clinging to the relationship. Oh, hang around, hang
Right.
around, hang around. Eventually, maybe, no. He's saying, you got it, you're ready? Now
Right.
go. Don't hang around. The teacher's only to take you across. Once you're across, don't hang around anymore.
Right.
Moreover, you'll see in the rest of the text that the whole issue of authority and trust is, from his teaching, trust yourself. You have it within you to know this. And his goal as a teacher is only to eliminate those impediments that keep you from seeing it in yourself. He quickly wants you to see it in yourself and not trust him, but trust your own confirmation of the experience. So again, it echoes the Buddha's teaching is that the teacher only points the way, but you walk it yourself, and by walking it yourself, you confirm it for yourself. The trust then is in the confirmation of your own direct experience of it, not in somebody else.
Right.
Even if hypothetically you take the text of the teacher as a focal point, like a guide, the actual trust is replaced by knowledge. It's not continued trust, continued faith. But it's actually affirmed by insight and knowledge, and then the faith and trust is, in a sense, gone.
Right.
Because there's no need for it anymore, because it's already in the conviction of the experience that comes. So it's very different in that way.
Yeah.
And you'll see this as we go on. You'll see that he eschews any ties or relationships to him other than as a doctor's needed to help you get, you know, the bone straight or something. And it's not like, well, why don't you come into my office and visiting me? I know you're well and healthy, but let's say, no,
Right.
he's not there at all. He's just saying, as soon as you're well and healthy, go. And in fact, if you were well and healthy, you wouldn't even need me in your life. So he's not interested in building a following, a group of disciples. He's only interested in expediently helping them see through what's impeding their own awakening. So the key here, it can be subterfuge if it weren't intrinsically whole and complete within you. You know, if it was something that you felt was outside, it was a mysterious and mystical in some distant mountain, you know,
Right.
or in some secret mantra. And you'll see when this, if I ever get to it, as we move along the text, when the martial art monk goes after him and he wants it. And he says, give me the secret. And he says, there is none. The secret's with you. That's a very different tone and message from the concern you have, which is a valid concern growing up not only in the Bay Area, but I think probably in the United States since the late 60s.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about this in the other class. You just mentioned one, what I would call deviant teacher, but there's been a host of them in the modern culture who have in some ways taken elements of Buddhism and other religions and worked them together in a strange cocktail that has caused people to really go down wrong roads and get confused. And so I would say stay the course here and see if you're still seeing that at the end. But I think you'll see that it's not this. It's not this. Okay, let's roll. So he goes in, and again, what's interesting here is the fifth patriarch uses a text, uses a Buddhist discourse as the basis of the conversation rather than my personal knowledge. He simply reads the text to him and allows some interchange to happen because he's ready, because he's ripe. Hearing those words of the text can cause a really deep transformation because the timing. This is what's interesting about it, because a text like this text, the Vajra Sutra, the Sixth Patriarch Sutra, the Avatamsaka Sutra, in some sense, are just words on paper. They're fingers pointing to the moon, so to speak, but they aren't the moon. If you cultivate your own body and mind and get into a state of attentive purity, you can read the same text at a different time and have a profound experience of insight and liberation and meaning that wouldn't be there before, and you're trying to figure out what's the difference, because the text is essentially the same. And the difference is the light and energy that you bring to it and the sincerity you bring to it can actually reveal deeper meanings in the text that weren't there at the first read. And so a simple line, like everything's made from the mind alone, you could hear 1,000 times or read 1,000 times. But if you cultivate Sword in the sense that he has deeply and intensely, hearing that line at the right moment can just cause the shell of ignorance to just crack. And something is seen for the first time, even though the words are the same. So that's why in studying the text, the technique for getting an interpretation isn't simply memorizing it or reading it over and over again, or even bowing and worshiping it, but cultivating yourself to such a point that the dialogue changes because you're bringing something new to it. The metaphor from the Avatamsaka is like, it says the sutra text is like this jewel sitting on a pedestal in a dark room. And it has many facets to it, but because of the darkness, it's just this blob. But if you open the door and come in and carry a light, the light will reflect and you'll see the facets. And the more light you bring, the more facets you'll see, until all the facets interpenetrate without obstruction, and you see the entirety of the Dharma realm. It's very much like we're in the Gandavyuha, where good wealth ends up at the end, going up this tower, and it just sees the total interpenetrating phenomena. And so what it's saying is that by cultivating, you generate a certain amount of light that then actually reveals the facets of the text in ways that you wouldn't have seen before. So in any event, he reads the Vajra Sutra and he comes to this line, and it's interesting, it's the same line that he had heard from the stranger when he was delivering wood. And it's this line, and we have it below in the footnote so you can look at the Chinese if you want to. It's Ying Wu So Zhu, Er Sheng Xi Xin. Basically, we translate, let your mind be unattached, clinging to nothing. Let your mind be unattached, clinging to nothing, which goes to your question here. Let your mind be wondering at what the secret is. Let your mind be searching for it beyond, he's just saying, hey, let your mind go, your ego mind go, cling to nothing, boom, it's there. It's the clinging that covers it over. It's not that I'm a good teacher or a bad teacher. It's not because it's mystical or mysterious. It's nothing else. You actually are just going, I can't see it. He says, drop your hands, open your eyes, there it is. Wow! And he says, don't thank me. What are you thanking me for? I just told you to drop your hands and open your eyes. Take a look at it. So what he's doing is the line is confirming, let your mind be unattached, clinging to nothing. As soon as he hears these words, he said, I experienced a profound awakening and understood the essential nature, the inherent nature embraces the 10,000 things. Now this is, he's seen somehow that the essential nature, the mind, you can use these interchangeably, Xin and Xing, the mind, the nature, are used interchangeably here, embraces the 10,000 things. Okay, so we'll unpack this a little bit, but I want to do this, at least this verse tonight. And then he says, how unexpected. And he starts each of these 4 lines with that. How unexpected. This also mirrors the Buddha's awakening. Strange indeed, strange indeed, strange indeed. When the Buddha has his awakening. So they're all saying the same thing. Strange indeed, far out, how unexpected, whoa. And why are they saying this? It's because it's so obvious. But it wasn't obvious until they saw, it's sort of like, it's so obvious, it's been around me all the time, I've been sitting on it, and because I didn't quite open my eyes or pay attention, I thought it wasn't there. And so when they're saying unexpected, it isn't like, wow, I just entered some far out mystical understanding. He's saying, oh my gosh, I didn't expect it because it was so obvious. It was right in front of my eyes all the time. How unexpected what? The essential nature is intrinsically pure. How unexpected the essential nature is originally unborn and dying. How unexpected the essential nature is complete in itself, lacking nothing. How unexpected the essential nature is fundamentally still and unmoving. How unexpected from the essential nature the myriad dharmas come to be. Okay, so unless we've done the rice and the sieve and we're ready, when we hear this, like I read it many times, I go, let's see, what does this mean? Because it's not like, wow, I say, how in other words, what I'm saying, if you're in the same state, you read this and you're just going, you're excited to the nth degree. You're going, I suspected this all along, and now it's confirmed. You have almost a similar experience as the Sixth Patriarch, and I can see by looking around that unless you're really hiding it, nobody's quite had the same experience. So that being the case, we'll try our best maybe to unpack some of this with the idea that, again, it is something he's directly experiencing, and the best he can do for his explanation is to say these things about it. Now, again, this is not to be obscure and not to be hidden or mysterious about it. He is saying what is coming spontaneously from his awakening at this, and awakening means opening his eyes and seeing things. So when he says how unexpected it's intrinsically pure, he's confirming that it isn't something you have to purify. It's something you don't have to work on purification. You go back to Shensho's verse, he says, sweep it clean, let no dust alight. He's saying, no, it is pure in itself. It's already whole and pure. This essential nature is pure, meaning doesn't have admixture. Pure also meaning doesn't have anything needed to be added or taken away. It's 100% unadulterated, whole and complete, which follows the next the line down, lacking nothing. So you could take these almost as meaning the same. Purity doesn't mean simply that it's free of defilement and klesha, which it does mean. So therefore, when those arise, they're coming from movements in the mind that are not on top of it as it moves. This is very different than saying we're intrinsically flawed and incomplete. We're innately depraved and cannot ever become whole and complete because we have this sinful, if you want to use that language, sinful nature. Not just sinful behavior, but sinful nature. We're inclined towards sin. We're born towards sin. I'm using a Western word here. Evil, bad, impurity. And so this idea that you would be innately then depraved and incomplete would then lead you to, I have to seek to respond and clean that away. I have to seek someplace to become whole and complete. And so that's why his message throughout, don't seek outside, don't seek outside, don't seek outside. All seeking outside is based on the misconception that you're not whole and complete, that you're not intrinsically pure. If you're not in a state of this awakened purity right now, it's not because you lack it or it's deficient and therefore you have to go get it, but it's because you've neglected it. It's a very different message. Is that a question or are you just... Okay. Then the next one, originally unborn and dying, he's talking about something that doesn't come and go. Now, at the very simple level, he's saying, even though you and forget it's there, it doesn't go. And it doesn't come back. It's always there, always present. At a deeper level, he's referring to something beyond even what we call birth and death. And so this is, on many levels you can interpret this, but he says unborn and undying means his essential nature is the state of a Buddha who's attained nirvana, and whatever they mean by birth and death being over is in this line here. So something, whatever that is, does not come and go. The opening lines of the Avatamsaka says, going and coming with no border, movement and stillness, one source. It's describing this phenomena. So, we're not going to figure this one out tonight, but what he is saying, what comes and goes, the conditioned elements of the 5 skandhas, is a temporary thing. Your true home, your true self. And they use that language sometime to say true self because they don't want to imply there's nothing whatsoever. There is something that doesn't come and go. Then the third line is, it's complete in itself, lacking nothing. This confirms the first line, that it's pure. Lacking nothing confirms this idea that there's nothing you need to become whole and complete. There's nothing you have to fill. There's no absence. There's a Buddhist writer who describes modern culture. I was going to say Western, but I don't think it's just Western. Modern culture as a culture and societies that are driven by lack, a sense of lack. And the sense of lack, of not having enough, not being whole and complete, which then actually feeds off religious ideas of innate depravity. And this is partly Weber's thesis on the rise of capitalism, was driven by insecurities regarding incompleteness, and therefore wanting to acquire and get so you can feel whole and complete. So at many levels, this is a very interesting teaching. He says that the history of the modern culture, modern society, is driven by this anxiety over lack. I don't have enough. I'm not whole. I'm not sufficient. I need. I want, and I chase, and I acquire, and yet I never feel whole and complete. The more I acquire, the more empty I feel, chasing things that ultimately have no meaning. And so I ditch them and replace them for others. And this frantic chasing of our tails, so to speak, is driven by a deep sense of lack. What he's doing here is he's totally undercutting it and saying that is a misreading of your essential nature. You are whole and complete and lack nothing. Therefore, there's nothing to seek. There's nothing to go after. And the further you go after it, the more you neglect this, and the further from it you go. So this has many implications at an environmental level. It's our sense of lack and want and need that drives us to consume the planet. And yet, is there some point where we get and we say, I have had enough. I've consumed enough. I've cut down enough trees. I've dug up enough oil. I've amassed enough trinkets and dongxis. How does he say in one of my favorite books is Dr. Seuss. What's that, Doctor? Huh? Yeah, there's needs. Needs are things that everyone needs. But the Lorax. The Lorax, if you haven't read the Lorax, it's a very Buddhist tale. You should read the Lorax. So if you get tired of sutras, just get Dr. Seuss's The Lorax. And the Lorax is this, it's a short story, but he's a friendly little creature, but he's got the last seed left for a kalpata tree or something. And all those seeds and trees have been used up and cut down to make things. But they call them sneeds, S-N-E-E-D. So sneeds are just every trinket dongxi, kind of thing that we feel we need. It fills all the magazines. It's online. Amazon is full of sneeds, and you go shopping on eBay for sneeds. Sneeds are things that everybody thinks they need. And so they basically destroy the whole planet, cutting down these trees to make these sneeds that everybody needs. In fact, they don't know they need them, so they have to have advertising to convince them that they need them, which plays on, you're not whole and complete yet, right? If you only had this, you'd look more beautiful, you'd be stronger, you'd be healthier, you'd be richer. If you just eat, drink, buy this product. So in the end, there's one seed left that he entrusts to this young kid, right, to plant it again after the change of consciousness occurs. And this is the Lorax. I really highly recommend you read it. It was banned in certain cities in California, by the way. Oh, yeah, you're thinking, how could Dr. Seuss's lovely children's book, The Needs and the Lorax, be banned? It was banned primarily in logging communities. Mm-hmm. Parents whose livelihood came from cutting down trees came in and had massive demonstrations until they banned it from the schools and took it out of the library. So if nothing else, if you're deviant like me, read the banned book. Go get the Lorax and read it, okay? But this is an important point because this lacking nothing, in a very, very deep sense, the Buddha says this is where all the problems come from. All the problems, you could say, well, it's tersna, it's thirst. But the thirst is coming from anxiety. And the anxiety is coming from the sense that I'm incomplete, I lack. And therefore, the thirst is driven not so much as its own. It's not so much a desire for something, but an anxiety away from the fear that I don't have. I'm not whole and complete. If that can be quelched, if you can reach the point of seeking nothing, everything's okay. There's no worries. And the Tao Te Ching says, once you find the contentment that simply comes from being content, you'll never by any other means find contentment. Once you've tasted this. So this is where it's pushing for. And then the next line says, it's fundamentally still and unmoving. This means not that it's dead or it's inert. It means still means quiet, calm, level, undisturbed, unperturbed, yet fully aware and fully awake. And unmoving means not phased by the passing phenomena, not moved off center. So unmoving doesn't mean stagnant, dead, but it means unmovable in the sense that the conviction and the knowledge that I'm whole and complete and everything's okay, boom, keeps you then able to respond. Because you're not seeking, then you're not afraid of getting or losing. Because you're not afraid of getting or losing, then you can take everything with a level and even mind. But it doesn't mean that you're not aware. And then finally, how unexpected the essential nature, the myriad dharmas come to be. This is not referring to a kind of strange material idealism that everything, like the stars and the planets and everything are made from our mind. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about our experience of the world is coming through the filter of our mind and then therefore made from our mind. And it's not describing whatever is out there. And I say this with some caution. Whatever is out there, it's not saying is made from this mind. That would be really kind of silly, wouldn't it? Did you make the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery? Yes, I guess I did with my mind. Really, can you make me another? Well, not quite now. It doesn't mean that. It's not this kind of idealism. It's saying that our experience of whatever is here is made from our mind. So what we experience is filtered through the sense organs and the sense objects and the consciousnesses of our mind making something out of it. This is what it's called made from the mind. The myriad dharmas are referring to all these phenomena that come from our consciousness interacting and so forth. How can another way to say it is, for example, you could say, well, science is tells us how and what the universe is. But really, it's more like science tells us how and what we think the universe is. It's different. Okay? So everything that's known is perceived through the mode of the perceiver, of the knower. As our knowledge and awareness shifts, what we know and perceive also shifts. So all it's making a statement about is the myriad things come from our consciousness. Informed, uninformed, liberated, confused, whatever it is, that's what we are structuring and calling our reality. So our experience of reality is made from. So this has to do, this gets really pretty interesting because my teacher wrote it's one of the few things he actually wrote. And actually, it was these verses that got put into a little book, very small little book called The 10 Dharma Realms Are Not Beyond a Single Thought. And these verses came to him late one night after a lecture. He wrote them all in a couple hours, and then the book was put together. And he describes the realms, the 10 Dharma realms being the whole of existence, from the hells and the animals and ghosts, up through people, up through devas, up through Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And he said all of these realms come from the mind. So this is what's being talked about here. The myriad things come from the mind. And the verse was, if you wish to know all Buddhas of the 3 periods of time, some of you recited this verse, right? Contemplate the nature of the Dharma realm, the nature of the reality. It's all made from this mind. But then he would say, if you wish to know all people of the past, present, and future, contemplate the nature of the Dharma realm. They are all made from the mind. If you want to contemplate yourself and ask, who am I, where did I come from, where am I going? Contemplate your mind, because that's the generator of who you are, where you're doing, what you and so forth. So the verse then goes through all the different Dharma realms and says these particular thoughts, ideas, structures of mind create the realm of animals. It's plasticity. In other words, the possibilities can shift and change and transform based on our thoughts, based on our consciousness. And this can happen within a lifetime or over many lifetimes, because the measure of lifetime is not relevant here. This is not something that is subject to the limits of time. Consciousness just keeps transforming and transforming. So in it is this idea, we are who we are because of what we've done with body, mouth, and mind, and we will be who we will be by what we are doing right now with body, mouth, and mind. It's a dynamic, active process. There's no moment of creation, there's only constant creating. And so we're right in the matrix of it now, sitting in this room, generating whatever we're generating. We are creating the ground of the seeds of the transformation of what we're going to be the rest of tonight and tomorrow and so forth. It's really a powerful and empowering dynamic to understand how this is working. So that's why when he was teaching us the characters, and I being a real Westerner, Chinese was like the most foreign thing to me. One of the first characters he did was a character for Xin mind. Okay, so all you in Chinese know. I don't know if I can do it backwards. I have to do it this way. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 3 dots and then this hook shape. And so the master said, now to help you remember it, here's the verse. 3 dots like a cluster of stars and a hook like the crescent moon. So he said, 3 dots and a hook like a crescent moon. Those with fur and horns come from it, and Buddhas are made from it too. So that was the verse he gave. It was like, so this Xin, this mind, or Xing, this nature, they're used interchangeably. All Buddhas come from it, and animals and ghosts and people come from it too. It's the same storehouse repository. That's the nature of how things go. So when he's saying the myriad things, he's understanding the dynamic process of how the mind gives rise to perception of reality, but who we really are and who we think we are. And at the same time, both contains the potential to move beyond what we think we are, and in the same potential to limit what we are and shrink it down to something even less palatable than even being a person. So this is how it goes. There's a very interesting Chan verse that helps this way. I think if I can remember. Where there are people, there are flies. And then the last line is, and Buddhas too. Where there are people, there are flies, and Buddhas too. Saying the same thing. In the human is the potential for absolute Buddhahood or absolute defilement. And this helps, I think, in a way explain the range in just the human realm of how people who are essentially biologically in many ways almost identical can have such a range of going from, being serial killers of the worst type up to Nobel laureates who, invent all this incredible stuff, the range of humanity, the plasticity, and it can shift within a lifetime. Not just in, somebody can go from being really down and decadent and horrible and become almost an awakened being in a lifetime, and people who start out really well can decline. It's talking about this plasticity, and it's driven by the thought processes, the emotions and feelings of this mind as it works through and interprets and whatnot. So cultivating this mind is at the heart of what Dharma is about. Not cultivating external worship of deities or Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, not just memorizing and even taking refuge. His teaching is go directly to this mind, because that's the wellspring of everything. This is the source. That's why it's called the direct teaching. So maybe I'll pause. You sent me a question. Did you want to pursue? Okay. See, some people ask questions here, like, and then some people hold their questions and send me emails. So, not that I can answer them any better, but see if you can articulate your question, and we'll spend a few minutes on it.
All right. Well, you've somewhat covered it tonight, but I've been feeling a little
Yay!
sorry for Hui Neng, because it feels to me like he, shows up at the seat of learning, like Cambridge University or something, and there's all these possibilities, and he's told, oh, you pretty much know what's in the books, go away. Not in a bad way, but here there's no chance to meet the professors, there's no chance to commune with like-minded people, except that the ones in this case seem to have been kind of murderous. And,
Ain't it always so?
and he can't read, so he can't go out and do this on his own. So
Right.
I feel like, why push him out with a robe and bowl so quickly? I get it that there's nothing to obtain, and that he's pretty much achieved a certain amount of wisdom, but for practical reasons, he's going to be the sixth patriarch. He might get questions from people, and they're going to be saying, Shakyamuni who? Because he hasn't read things from the Buddhist tradition. Or if he ever ends up, doing a little backsliding and the dust starts to alight again, it would be nice to have these other resources at his disposal. That's my question.
So the question is, he's got 8 months there, and it's like he's in medical school and he doesn't go to any classes, doesn't get any training, and then he gets the surgical kit and out he goes. So, okay. The question is, how does this work? How does this work? It's a secret. No. You want to add to that? Go ahead.
I was having similar thought, take physics, right, or the scientific method. I think there has been a cumulative element to that. Our understanding of how things work has evolved over time, and it has been cumulative. And a lot of this it's almost denying the cumulative nature of knowledge. And I think maybe what your question is, to some regards that it's almost very binary, like either you get it or you don't.
Well, okay. So we got two different questions here. This is fun. Let me go to your question first, and then I'll this question, or try. Whether knowledge, if you use the science method, whether knowledge accumulates or not is still a subject of debate. So if you wanted to look into this, you should read Thomas Kuhn's Scientific Revolutions. His argument is, in fact, it doesn't accumulate, but rather we get locked into paradigms of which a certain body of knowledge comes, it shatters a paradigm, and then we shift over to a new paradigm, but it's not cumulative, it's actually breaking the old paradigm. So there's these radical disjunctures rather than cumulative. So that's one thought. But in this knowledge that he's talking about here, it's a different knowledge. This isn't the encyclopedia knowledge. In an encyclopedia knowledge, we add day to day, we accumulate, we increase. If you go on the web, you'll see the accumulation of knowledge, so much so we couldn't absorb it, right? So we accumulate knowledge, we accumulate knowledge. This is actually a knowledge or insight that comes from subtracting rather than addition. In other words, it's talking about something that is not accumulated through inquiry and through study and through memorization, but is tapping into something that's innate and whole and complete and actually gets covered over by too much worry, too much thinking, too much grabbing and attaching. So it's a different kind of knowledge it's talking about here. This knowledge is not the knowledge of building up a scientific method aiming at getting a cure for Ebola or something. So we do a series of research experiments and blah, 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 because he says it's whole and complete already. So it's talking about a whole different thing. It's talking about wisdom as opposed to knowledge. So now back to Alona. I don't know the answer because I started by saying, we don't know what he did for 8 months except the rice. Now, it's like, I'm tempted to say, I'll do the kitchen. Because I'm thinking there must be some magic in doing the rice. So, people come and say, would you like to study? Would you like to go? No, I want to do the rice. But I don't think it's magic in the rice. So what is happening? First of all, if it's a regular monastery, which it is, it's a teaching monastery, then there's a lot of things going on during the day, which he would be well within earshot of. Okay, so he's probably going to the morning and evening ceremonies, both of which do recitations of sutra text. So even though he can't read and write, I'm just being practical here, he is absorbing through his ears, and he's very astute with his listening. He is picking up these teachings. So that's the first thing. There's ceremonies with rituals, with chanting of sutras and so forth during the day. Sometimes at the meals and sometimes during the day, there's also informal talks given, of which he would be also an earshot of because of the way the monastery works. So he accessing a lot of hearing in the Shravaka sense of hearing the teaching without having to read it. So that's one level. Also, people there, as you notice, are talking about text. So he's hearing someone say this text, Lankavatara text, and so forth. There's murals up on the walls which show some of that. And so he will be in the kitchen hearing certain lines. Oh, so-and-so, the master said today, such and such. Now, his attunement in picking up the meaning of that, given his mind and nature, could be very, very different than somebody else and say, I don't know what it meant by that. It's sort of like his verse shows that a few lines can cause him to have deeper understanding because he's so innerly cultivating his own wisdom that when he hears a line of wisdom, it just like immediately connects. I don't know. For me, it's like, I don't know why this comes to me. My mind works in strange ways. Sometimes on the windshield, I see these drops of water, and they're all isolated. But at some time, all of a sudden, two of them start to move, and then the last one, they just join together like that. So this is my metaphor for he hears something, and those two drops of water just go. I think there's another element, and that is, and I don't know how to explain this, I'll just throw it out, somewhat of my experience. With a great teacher like the Fifth Patriarch, and like someone with his potential, there's an attunement that is beyond even the ordinary communication of student and teacher. There is a communication going on subtly with body language. There's a communication, if you will, going on, and I don't know any other word for it, but almost psychically. And this can be transmitted in dreams between the student and teacher. It can be transmitted wordlessly through this mind to mind. And when I mean my mind, my spirit to spirit, where there's so much attunement. And this is not mystical. It means that their sensibilities are so refined and there's so little interference with the ego that the level of communication, many of the biographies and autobiographies of monks and nuns talk about this ability. And it has to do with knowing others' thoughts, and not just knowing the thoughts of others, but knowing the thoughts of the teacher. And so this communication can take place in this way, and it's not seen or heard by anybody. I suspect in this case, it's probably, give you an example. For me, personally, I met my teacher in dreams before I actually met him. Okay, and I got instructions from this strange Chinese man in my dreams before I ever met any Chinese man, especially one who had one shoulder bare and, and that whole thing. So it's like, well, what's that about? And then when I met him, many days, I knew absolutely no Chinese, and he didn't know any English. And so it was really hard for us to talk to each other. Needless to say, I needed to be talked to. I needed instruction. So often it would come either in dreams or in this sort of wordless way. I'll give you an example. During one of my first retreats, I started to just see how difficult this was going to be. I was sitting in meditation, my legs hurt, my ankles hurt, everything hurt. And I was sitting there thinking I was going to get enlightened, and it was just a blizzard of thoughts and emotions and just all over the place. And then I started thinking of my entanglements in life, with friends and relatives and all these, and debts and whatnot. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know how, man, I don't think I can do it. This is like, whoa, So I just got overwhelmed. And I went into the kitchen out of the Buddha hall, and I just sat down on one of those stools there. There was nobody there. It was the Gold Mountain Monastery. And I sunk into capital P, capital D, pits of despair. Like in Winnie the Pooh, you have pits, capital P, of despair, that dark place. So I went down into the dark mines where the sun never wind blows cold. And I was down there, you know, oh God, blah, blah, there's no way out. And the more I thought about it, the deeper down I went. And I was about to just throw in the towel and give it up because I thought, oh man, you know, I'm not even getting my head straight, much less getting my Buddha or Bodhisattva. Ha! That's no way. I know that all beings have the Buddha nature and all can become Buddhas, but you know, not me. I'm from Wisconsin. You know, I've got a lot of karma. It ain't going to happen. And so I'm sitting there just like, and then the door of the kitchen opens, and the master comes in. And I'm going, huh. So I just sit there. I didn't really pay attention to him. I was so in the pits of despair. And he just starts walking around me as I'm sitting on this stool. I'm just sitting there like, what's he doing? And he's walking around me, and I'm just, you know, staying in the pits, but looking over one edge, like, what's this about? And but I was so caught with this state, I couldn't even acknowledge it. And I didn't know. I was fresh in. Most people, when the teacher comes in, they put their palms together and bow, and I'm just like, yeah, man, I'm in the pits of despair. Yeah. I don't even acknowledge him. You know, he's like circling around, and like, why is he walking in a circle? So he's walking around, and suddenly he walks around me like 3 times, and when he finishes walking around, he just turns to go. And as he turns to go, suddenly it's like from the pits of despair, the sun comes out after the shower and the rain, and I hear in my mind, don't worry, there's no problem, everything's okay. You know, now, I didn't necessarily think that because I was in the pits of despair. So that was like, wait. But somehow, he gave me a message that, you know, don't worry about this. Everything's okay. It's not a problem. It'll be, you know. And then I just got up, went back to it, and continued. And I'm thinking, wow, I wonder if that happens to everybody. But then I thought, well, when you asked the question about this, so if a dodo like me can get a communication, then think what the Sixth Patriarch would be getting from the Fifth Patriarch, right? I mean, it probably very clear. Mine just happened to be a lifeline, and probably the teacher wanted to say it to me in Chinese, but I wouldn't have understood it. And so things like this can happen if you're really sincere and you're in a good atmosphere. And again, it wasn't mysterious, or it was just saying, lift yourself up. Because thinking you can become a Buddha overnight, I'm going to knock you down. But thinking you're in the pits of despair and you can't, I'm going to lift you up until you learn to sustain yourself with your own energy. So these things are quite interesting, and I don't know if that answers your question, but I think there's more going on than 8 months of grinding rice. Okay, so we'll stop here for tonight. We'll pick this up again next week. And if you have questions, you're all welcome to email them. I don't know if we'll be able to answer them. So, any announcements? Yes? Okay, so everybody should stay in here and sincerely bow. Repentance says, well, I go out first. Because today I was false thinking about persimmons. I said, it's persimmon season. I really like persimmons. And then I have a persimmon tree in the backyard, and the little kid next door decided to liberate my persimmons. No, everybody grab a persimmon. Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, we'll do the transference in English. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace, with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. Yet people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity. May their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness
this find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Ding li san ba